Assalamu alaikum, my name is Syed-Science and this is my science fair project on friction's factors. So what is friction? Friction is an extremely important force which affects all motion. If it weren't for friction, we wouldn't be able to move anywhere. This is proved by Newton's third law. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Basically, you wouldn't be able to move forward if you didn't have friction acting back upon you. So I wanted to measure for this experiment how much surface affects friction. Friction does change depending on surfaces. Rough surfaces tend to have more friction than smooth surfaces because rough surfaces have more irregularities and they have more conflict going on. So something else that I wanted to measure was the coefficient of friction, which was one of the things needed for this experiment. The coefficient of friction is the amount of friction between two certain surfaces. So there's two main kinds of coefficients, static and kinetic. Kinetic friction is the ratio of the friction force to the normal force experienced by a body moving on a dry, non-smooth surface. The static coefficient of friction, it's the measure of the amount of friction existing between two surfaces which are at rest. Basically, in order to move, you would need to beat the static friction. And that's what I chose to measure for this experiment for the coefficients. The big question, what effects do surfaces have on friction? Purpose. So the purpose of this experiment was to find out how much of an effect surface has on friction, as I mentioned earlier. I chose to do this through building a prototype that acts like a car and to see how the car drives on different surfaces. This is because driving is a huge part of our lives and friction is something that affects driving. So I wanted to see how we could maybe improve driving or experiment with driving. Hypotheses. So for my experiment, I had three different surfaces which I chose to measure. Glass, cement, or concrete surface, which is a road, and then wooden plank surfaces. So I hypothesized that the glass surface would cause the most amount of friction on the prototype I was going to build, and the concrete surface would cause the least amount of friction upon the prototype I was going to build. Engineering goal. So the goal of my project was to try to make a prototype successfully hand-built to measure the effects that surface have on friction by measuring the same distance on three different surfaces. Variables. Independent variables, the wooden plank surface, the glass surface, and the cement road surface. And the cardboard strips I used to measure the distance of the car. The dependent variables was the prototype I built, which is based off of a car, and the control was the cement surface or the road surface because road surfaces are the surface most used. Materials. So you're going to need the base for the car, like a plastic bottle. Then you're going to need 4 rubber wheels from a toy car, straws, skewers, tape, grease, rubber band pulleys, or some gears, a DC motor, a camera, your logbook, timer, and some cardboard strips. Engineering procedure for building the car. So first you need to get your base, and then basically you need to get a skewer and put it in one of the wheels, and as you can see you're going to put a straw on top, and you're going to put the car straw through with the wheel, and you're going to put the other one. As you can see in this photo, that's how it worked, and you just do it on both sides. However, for the back wheel, what you need to do is that you need to put the DC motor on one of the straws, and you need to cut the straw in half. Then you're going to put the half straw on the skewer, which will go through the wheel, and then you're going to put the gear on top, or the rubber band pulley, which you're going to use, and then you're going to put the other half of the straw and the other wheel on the other side, and then you're going to secure the gear onto the DC motor so that when the DC motor spins, it'll rotate the gear, which will cause your axle to move, or your rubber band pulley, which you will connect with a rubber band. And then you're going to get 2 batteries, and as you can see in my photo, you just tape them on top, and then you're going to put the red and black wires and tape them onto, you're going to take the red wire onto the positive battery end, and you're going to tape the black wire to the negative battery end. Then you're going to connect it to the DC motor, and this will cause the DC motor to rotate your car's back wheels, and this will move the car forward. Said if you want to stop the car, you just simply untape the wires from the DC motor. And here's a close-up of the photo of my car. And also, you're going to get two cardboard strips which are going to be used to measure distance. So they both need to be of equal distance. Experiment procedure. So grab your set of railings, which is your cardboard strips. So go to the first surface that you want to measure and place the railings onto the surface. So you could either put them on the floor, or you could just put them facing upright, whichever you prefer. Put the car in between these two railings, get your stopwatch ready, and then switch on the car. Then you're going to measure how long it took, and then you're going to stop the car once it reaches the end of the cardboard strips. You're then going to record this in your logbook, and you're going to switch to the next surface and repeat these steps. When all the data for the trial is gathered, then you're going to write it down in your logbook. Repeat this procedure for 2 more trials. And here are some photos that I had of my experiment on the wooden plank surface and the cement surface. So I made some tables, and basically these tables included the trials and the speed it took and the total friction, and I created an average table. As you can see, the glass surface seemed to cause had the most set time to cross the distance, while the wooden plank seemed to have the least. And the total friction for static friction, it was also the same. Glass had the most and wooden planks had the least. And I created a bar graph too, so you can really just visualize it better. And as you can see, the data is all shown. The wooden planks and the cement seem to be very close. Data analysis. So, like I mentioned earlier, most friction on the car was caused by glass surface, and the least friction was on the wooden surface. The cement surface had a decent amount acting upon. Even though the wooden cement surface had a significant amount of difference in speed, the coefficients that they had were very close in number, so when it was calculated into friction, their friction was close in number. Results. So the glass surface ended up causing the most friction, the wooden surface caused the least friction, and the cement surface was in the middle. It was closer to the wooden surface. So discussion. So the results of my project helped me really just expand my knowledge in physics and on friction in general. This project was a way for me to try to find more things to experiment on friction, because it really was a bigger topic than I thought, and it seems really complex and interesting. So of course my project was an engineering / experimenting project, so there was trial and error. So for the engineering part, like my car, when I was getting the axle ready, the gears would often slip off each other, so this would cause the car to not move at all. So I ended up having to ask my dad, who has engineering experience, for help, and he helped me. And my car's base was initially going to be a bottle, but due to lack of a bottle at home, we ended up I ended up getting 2 ramen cups and just taping them together, and it ended up being a sufficient base. Some future directions I would give myself is to make sure that the car's weight is easy for the DC motor to pull, to make sure to spend more time on the axle, and that this is a trial and error project, so it's okay to make mistakes, and that'll just help me grow. Conclusion. So the goal that I had, it was achieved. My car was successfully able to measure the effects friction had while giving me accurate results based on research I had done. The data, it approves of my first hypothesis, but it contradicts my second. I had hypothesized that the glass surface would cause most friction, while the cement would have the least. Instead, the wooden plank surface ended up having the least. Real-life applications. So this study is important because it can be applied to actual cars on real roads. We know that sometimes cars can struggle because of friction on roads, like when it's slippery and wet. So this project is a way for us to try to experiment different ways to improve roads in our modern society. Future expansions. So after this experiment, I found out that there's more ways I can expand this project. I could try experimenting different surfaces that have not been considered, or I could try even doing different shapes and see how much of an effect the shapes of roads have on friction. Acknowledgements. So first, I would like to thank God for this project. Without him, it would literally be impossible to do this project. Next, I would like to thank my science fair teacher. So she guided me throughout the whole project and gave me great ideas. Without her, I probably wouldn't have been able to finish this project, and I am forever grateful. Next, I have to give thanks to my little sister. She helped me time my car during the experiment, and she even took pictures for me. She contributed a lot, more than I asked for, so she deserves a lot of thanks. And finally, I would like to give thanks to my dad for his engineering experience. Really helped me with my project, and it just, without him, he saved my project. And that's the end. Thank you.